All right. All right. So, welcome back to the Frontline Strong Together webinar series. And I want to welcome all the people who are coming. Please feel free to share the link to people, friends, families, whoever. We don't close the link at any time during our webinar. So, you can share this link and people can come on and see the webinar. At any time during this, and it also will be recorded and posted to our website as well. So again, welcome to the webinar series. We are super excited for today's presenter. How life continues as a widow of a first responder, and she's so much more than that, so which just makes her even more amazing. So we have Amanda Button on today, and I am so excited for you guys to hear her presentation and ask questions. We'll go ahead like we normally do and ask questions at the end. Everybody can put their questions and their in the Q&A box or the chat. Both of them are open. And then we'll read them off and be able to ask the presenter your questions. And I am joined today by my amazing co-host, Kobe Taylor. Him and I are the ones who handle and take care of the webinars every month. And so we are excited to go ahead and get started today. I'll just go over a little housekeeping. As you guys know, we have a 24/7, 365 crisis and resource line. That number is 833-34-STRONG or 833-347-8766. This number is for all of our first responders and their families. And so this number is, it handles everything from crisis to if you just are looking for a local therapist or a peer support team, any and everything in between. So please don't hesitate to call that number if you know that you're looking for assistance or in the middle of a crisis. For our statewide resource warehouse, we have our website, and that is www.fst5.org. So go ahead and check out our website. That's also where you guys will be able to find the recording of this webinar. In addition to, you'll be able to see our podcast and all of the resources that we have for our local first responders. You'll be able to see at fst5.org. Okay. So without further ado, I want to introduce my co-host, Kobe Taylor. Introduce yourself and also Amanda.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name's Kobe Taylor. I'm with the Frontline Strong on the peer side and also run our peer team here in Region 7 for Michigan. And I am just honored that we have Amanda with us. She's done a couple with us when we were just doing our team webinars, and I support her mission, and I don't want to steal from her story. So I just kind of excited to get right into it. Again, thank you all for joining us, and welcome, Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I just appreciate you so much and all the support that you've given. It goes without saying, but just thank you. Honestly, I really do appreciate it. It means more than you know. So my name is Amanda Rae Button, and I am from Wisconsin. I am from the Waukesha area, famous Waukesha area over the last few years. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my story and just overcoming what I've been through. Just a little history about me. I was an Army vet a long time ago. Seems like a different lifetime ago. And then I did kind of normal life for a little bit. And then I got into the firefighting scene and was a firefighter EMT, decided to start dispatching, and then I dispatched for quite a while as well. So now I'm what we call quote unquote retired, and we'll get into that in a little bit here and why and what I'm doing. But just to kind of dive right into my story. So I feel like we all have a day in our history that kind of sticks out, whether it be good or bad, where you can kind of remember what you were doing, where you were, sights, smell, sounds. And to me, that's April 20th of 2018. April 20th of 2018, I was very pregnant. I was actually 1 week away to the day of giving birth to my daughter. And my husband, his name was Lieutenant Christopher Button. He was called into his office. I happened to have the day off and he didn't feel good about that meeting that he was about to have. So I decided to go in with him. I waited in the truck, and when he came out, he was turning in his gear. Turns out that he was forcibly resigned from the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department. I knew that he had been struggling at work, but I didn't know the extent. But he got in the truck and he basically said, they either told me I resign or they're going to strip me of my credentials and I'm done. He said, I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am. I don't know how to be anything. I don't know how to be a son, a father, a husband, a brother. He's like, all I know what to do is to be a police officer. That's what my life is. And I resonate with that because at the time I was a firefighter EMT as well as a dispatcher, and that personality as a first responder really kind of takes over. And you give your life to that career. To kind of figure out why he was forcibly resigned, I worked with him on a dispatcher level, but I didn't work with him on a person-to-person level. So I was one of his dispatchers. However, he was a lieutenant with the sheriff's department, and he was starting to have issues at work. We didn't know exactly that he had PTSD, but he was showing a lot of signs of PTSD. So he was being very forgetful at work. He was very tired. He just wasn't his normal self. At one point in time, his supervisor did sit him down and told him, Chris, this isn't why we promoted you. This isn't your normal work standard. And where that conversation should have gone at that time is saying, what can we do to help you? Let's figure out what's going on. But instead, it didn't go there. Instead, they trapped him in what really was kind of like a lie, like his back against the wall, to give them ammunition to forcibly resign him. So that was April 20th of 2018. A week later, our daughter was born. Our insurance, our benefits, everything were cut off. So I had to go back to dispatching pretty early. He was trying to get a job. We found out that his previous job, one of the upper command people, right-hand man to the sheriff, was what we call in the business blackballing his name. I had a chief reach out to me saying that they were contacted to see if they were applying anywhere, if he was applying anywhere. And that really took a toll on him because he was struggling finding a job. He was even struggling finding jobs at like security places, just anywhere and everywhere. He wasn't finding a job. So that then leads us to July. A couple months later, I was back to work. I had 4 shifts in back to work. And I came home one night and he was crying. He was upset because he realized that he had applied for a job that he already had applied for and never heard anything back. And it was kind of enough for him where he was feeling defeated. He had given almost 10 years to the sheriff's department and was promoted to a lieutenant, and he had carried other credentials such as an FTO. He was a part of different teams. And now he couldn't even get a job at McDonald's, and he couldn't figure out why. So that night, he was pretty low, and it was July 15th, to be specific. He was pretty low, but we had a nice night. We had dinner. We put our daughter to bed. And normally I would have gone to bed with my daughter, but that night I kind of just felt in my heart that I needed to stay awake a little bit longer, spend some time with him. I asked him if he would be coming to bed, and he said he wanted to stay up to read a little bit. That next morning, typically what we would do is if my daughter would start to get ready to nurse, he would get her ready, I would nurse, and we were a great team. He was 10 out of 10 would recommend for a husband and as a partner. I was very spoiled. But that morning was a little bit different. I heard my daughter start to stir, wanting to nurse, and it was the 16th of July, and it was about 5 maybe in the morning. And I noticed I woke up because nobody was helping her, and that was very odd. And I noticed that his side of the bed had not been slept in, and I thought that was kind of weird. I heard the TV on, so I went into our living room, and he wasn't there. The book he was reading was still on the coffee table. And that was what would now be the morning that would change my life completely forever. He was nowhere to be found. I called some of his old coworkers that were also lieutenants of the sheriff's department, seeing if they've heard from him, if they've spoken to him, called his family. Nobody could find him. His vehicle was still in our garage. I started thinking the worst. And as a dispatcher, you know what questions people are going to ask. And so I went and checked his vehicle. He wasn't there. I started looking around. He wasn't there. And so I ended up getting the message from one of his friends, the other lieutenants, saying, I think it's time you call the police. And that was a very sobering call for me, because every question that dispatcher asked me, I had the answer to, because I knew exactly what questions were going to be asked. I knew he was low the night prior, but I didn't know to what extent. So the police came, did a double check, checked everything out, and they decided to go start looking for him. His parents came over to help me with the baby, and his dad went looking for him. Finally, I logged in. This is 2018, so Find My iPhone was a thing. I logged in and I was able to see where his iPhone was because he had his phone on him. And I saw that it was at the park, just a couple blocks from our house. And so I'm like, okay, he's there. And I called his dad and I'm like, Jeff, he's at the park by the house. And Jeff said, I know, Amanda, I'm here. And I'm like, okay, I'll be right there. And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, click. And so I jumped in my car. My mother-in-law had my daughter, and I raced to the park. It's literally a 2-minute drive, if that. I don't even remember parking my car because the first thing I saw, now in my head, I was thinking the police are probably there with him. They're probably talking to him, figuring things out, what have you. But as I pulled up, again, I don't even remember putting my car in park because all I saw was yellow tape. And that's a vision that's never going to leave my mind. I know what yellow tape means, and it's not a good thing. Nobody had to tell me what happened. I got on my car and I raced to where he was. And it took 2 deputies, a police officer, and my father-in-law to tackle me to the ground because they didn't want me to see what there was. He had already been identified by his dad because we had matching tattoos and he saw the tattoo. But that was the day that I lost Chris. My daughter was not even 2.5 months old, and he was gone. Leading up to this, after he had lost his job, we did go to the doctor. He started to take medication for depression and anxiety, but he wasn't even 2 weeks in on that medication. While he was on the job, I don't believe he ever asked for help, to be honest, but his department is notorious for not helping others. My life completely did a 180 that day. I was still a dispatcher. I was no longer a firefighter or EMT, but I was still a dispatcher. And a new mom, and my best friend was gone. And now I was planning a funeral. His birthday was supposed to be 2 weeks after that. And instead of planning that birthday party, I was planning a funeral. Excuse me. So I'm very grateful for my department. The dispatchers, they all stepped in. They took my shifts so I could grieve. They offered help. They really took mental health seriously, and I'm really grateful for that. But it's been a battle ever since to get the sheriff's department on the same page. So I kind of went into the mode of raising my daughter. But I knew something had to be done. There's a reason why my husband married me. He was a very soft-spoken individual. I always said, I don't know how he ever was a police officer, because he was just cool, calm, collected, and very just quiet and kind and empathetic. Whereas I'm spicy and I talk. And I decided one day that I needed to start talking. And so that's when I started Unbutton the Stigma. Currently, I'm not a nonprofit, but I would love to be one day, to be able to give back resources or scholarships or something in Chris's name. But right now, it's more just telling my story, sharing how I lost Chris, and then how now I've also lost my best friend. So I always wanted to share the story of Chris so he doesn't get forgotten, that he was important and that he mattered. And since then, now my best friend, who was actually his partner while he was on the job, and he was just a deputy, his name was Garrett Grulke. He also obviously worked for the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department. He was also forcibly resigned after asking for help. And he was struggling on the job because he was going through some home issues. He was going through a rough divorce. Some of us have been through that. And whoever said leave work at work and home at home is not a human being. That's called a robot. And so he was also a part of our TAC team, and he was a trainer, and he constantly was asking for time and breaks because he was struggling big time. And he was told, well, we need you for this training. We need you to sit on this house. After that. He ended up turning to drinking and ended up getting in trouble on the job and forcibly resigned. And August 6th of 2022 took his life. These aren't the only two people from the sheriff's department that lost their lives. And they're not the only ones that struggled with mental health, that asked for help or didn't ask for help. I do have a couple of deputies that I had stayed in touch with that told me that they were told, you know where the help is. We don't need to tell you where it is. I have one that said this would be easier if you had a broken leg. Neither of those deputies are with the department anymore. And it's something that needs to be changed. So much in this field is the good old boys club. You shove it down, but at what point does it boil over? Since losing my husband and then Garrett, my mental health catapulted. I was still speaking. I've spoken to police departments. I've spoken to different trainings to try to share our story and get Chris's story out there. So people understand that this is a real life issue. But my mental health also had been taking a toll. I started volunteering for an organization called First Help. Back in the day when I found them after losing Chris, it was just called Blue Help. But now they're called First Help because what they do is they actually follow the numbers for recorded suicides by first responders. They put faces to the numbers, so it makes it more personal, so people actually listen. They also take on the families to make sure that we all feel like we are not forgotten. For just as an example, for suicides, especially with law enforcement, when somebody commits suicide, they take their life. I hate saying committed suicide, but when they die by their own hand, their benefits are shut off at midnight. They get no recognition, no honors, nothing. Some departments are a little bit more, I guess, understanding, and they do a little bit better, but most departments don't. Specifically, mine did not. Chris did not have honors at his funeral, nothing. In fact, the sheriff told his staff not to wear their uniform to his funeral. And so that being said, First Help will step in, make sure that they can still have access to stuff if they need it. They actually fought for us on Capitol Hill, where now there's actually a bill that is backdated to 2019 for anybody that loses their person, where they can still get insurance, they can still get benefits, etc., money, like their paychecks. And I'm so grateful for them. And I think it's super important that we put a face to the numbers so we can start getting that information out there. I started volunteering for them a few years ago. They've had me speak multiple times with them, which is really great. You can actually go to their website and you can get all the numbers. You can break it down by year, you can break it down by profession, you can break it down by age, sex, location, whatever you want to do. But I think it's super important to have that information out there. And when I was lost in the middle of the night, shortly after Chris died, and I was sobbing on just trying to find somebody that would understand what I was going through, that's who I found. And I'm just so honored and blessed to be able to work for them and volunteer for them. But so now this past year, I was working in the medical field for a couple of years after the pandemic. I just needed something a little bit more stable, and the hours were good and what have you. And I wasn't taking calls of people that were going through what I had gone through. I decided to quit my job. My mental health just wasn't where it had been. For so long, I've covered things up with work, alcohol, let's be honest. Anything and everything that I could do not to have to think about what my life was. I did. And so I took a long, hard look in the mirror. And last year I just decided enough's enough. I need to start working on myself. There's only one me. My daughter only has me. And I need to figure this out. And I think that was one of the hardest decisions I had ever made. Because it's terrifying. I am somebody that has worked multiple jobs since the age of 14, like all at once. I'm a workaholic, and I loved giving back, and I loved my career, and I miss it terribly. But I knew that the whole thing about pouring from an empty cup is so true, and I really wish somebody could have taken Chris and Garrett and so many other people aside and understood pouring from an empty cup, because then we wouldn't be here. And so over the last year, almost a year now, I've been focusing. I have a service dog now, for PTSD. I have very bad PTSD. And I've started therapy and have a psychiatrist now, and I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed to say that now. I had been ashamed for a very long time, but that's what mental health stigma is. And I think that it's important to not have that shame side of it. And right now, like, I'm working through the thick of it, and man, is it hard. So I am retired. I'm working on disability, which is insane. It's just crazy to think about. Like, I never would have seen this projector like in my life. But here we are. And I also decided to jump on board with another organization called Making Everything Good. It's Meg for short. It's a good friend of mine. Her name is Meg, that started it. She's a police officer in Virginia. She also has a golden retriever service dog. Her husband is a firefighter in the area. He has a service dog as well. They actually helped me get my service dog. And they do things for the community. They also help first responders, get assistance and help for their mental health if needed. So if they need like a plane ticket or whatever it may be, to make sure that we're helping them. We don't want it to be something bad to ask for help. Like I said before, this was a department that I was aligned with, right? That made it feel shameful to ask, and still do. And I'm not okay with that. Like, it's if you were having blood pressure issues, or you broke your leg or something, you would ask for help. So I don't understand how this is any different. I also think that it's insane that in order to get into this career path, you have to take a physical test and you have to take a mental test, right? But then that's it. They still will test you on your physicality, but then mentally, before they test you before you've seen anything, but after you've seen it, we're not gonna look into it. And I just think that it's something that needs to be talked about more and actually considered more. This life is way too short. And um, suicide leaves a huge hole. If it wasn't for my faith and my, my belief in heaven and God and the organizations that have literally come alongside me, I know I wouldn't be here. It is a fact that a family that has a suicide in it, those family members, specifically the spouse, are more likely to take their own life as well. I have 3 times where it was planned out and I would have done it, but God told me to go to sleep and wake up the next morning. And by the grace of God, I'm still here to talk about it. I am so passionate about people and their feelings. I'm passionate about all people and their feelings, but specifically first responders, and even more specific, honestly, men, because it is so frowned upon in our society in 2024 now to talk about what's going on or to seek assistance or even be on medication. It is so frowned upon, and I just don't get it. We've come a long way, I will say, since 2018 when Chris passed away, but we're not even close yet. And I think having open discussions is huge. I think that having open minds is huge. I think that gone are the days where it is a good old boys club. Gone are the days where, you just stuff it down. I think we need to start at the beginning where, academies and trainings, and where it's something that is on the calendar more regular, to be talked about, because right now I don't see that happening in my area specifically. I know there are areas that are way better and progressive. Wisconsin's not great when it comes to this stuff. This past year alone, just in Waukesha County, in a matter of 2 months, we had 2 suicides, a firefighter and somebody from the police side. And it was just in one county. And one was a younger gentleman, one was an older gentleman. And I knew one of them specifically because I worked with him for a long time, and it was awful. The fire department handled it so well. It's something that they never saw coming. I was in touch with them the entire time. I was with the family. I love them. I love them because they're family now. They're family. But I was so ashamed and I was so sad that there was one person in particular that could have spoken up about these 2 events, 2 tragic losses, and they didn't. And something that always crosses my mind is when I was working in dispatch, I worked on a consolidated dispatch center. So we dispatched for 19 police departments. And the sheriff's department, sometimes we have to send them in an area that had their own police department. And sometimes the squad guys would be like, that's not my area. That's not my area. And we always tease them, like, what does your patch say? It says Waukesha County on it. It doesn't just say beat 6. And the sheriff really had an opportunity to speak up over this past summer to talk about what was going on in the county, and he didn't. And there's so many other people out there like him where they would just shove it under the rug. Let's not talk about it. And I just need that to go away. I want that to stop. And if it's me making people uncomfortable is where growth happens. When you're, lifting weights and building muscle, if you stop when you start feeling that pain, you're not going to grow that muscle. And so I feel like in the uncomfortableness is where we grow. And I'm done being complacent. And I really pray that other people are done being complacent, because more and more, you're more like officers specifically are more likely to die by their own hand than on line of duty. So more and more we're learning that you're going to be touched by this in one way or another. I hate that I had to go first in this case, but if it's going to be anybody, I'm glad it was me, because I'm not going to stop talking about this until I can't anymore. And I, I've come a long way with joining organizations, with my faith, with my life. I'm engaged now to a wonderful man. He's incredible, and he loves my husband as if he ever knew him. And my daughter calls him dad because she knows daddy in heaven, but this is her earthly dad. And I mean, life has come a long way. It's not perfect. I still struggle so much. I miss my husband terribly every day. But we need to just talk, like, we need to sit in that uncomfortability with each other. And we need to do this because one person lost is one too many. And I know I'm never going to be able to cure this, if you will, or end this completely, but if I can save one person, I'm going to do it. I mean, I want people to look at my face and look at my daughter's face and know that she's turning 6 in April and she still cries a lot about her dad, because it's a huge piece of that's missing. She sees me be sad, like, if anybody is thinking, because I truly believe that my husband thought he was doing me a favor. And he didn't. And I just want people to think that if you feel that way, where you think you're doing somebody a favor by ending things, like, just stop for a second, because it makes things so much worse. And so if I can make somebody stop in their tracks, or just think a little bit, or actually think, you know what, I'm going to reach out to that organization, or I'm going to ask or seek a therapist or whatever. Therapy is cool, by the way. Therapy is so cool. It's one of the coolest things you can do. And you get to talk about yourself the entire time, which is great. 10 out of 10 recommend. Is it hard? Yeah, it's hard, but it's better than the alternative. And I just think that if you're going to take medication for your blood pressure, you should not be afraid to take medication for your head. I mean, life is really hard. It's been really hard the last few years. And why not make it easier for yourself? I mean, life is better in community. Life is better with people. That's how God created us and intended it for us to be. And there's so many other people out there feeling what you feel and going through what you're going through. And if you can just find those people and connect with them, so you know that you're not alone, it's going to be better. So I want to thank you guys. I am so grateful to be here. I'm so open to questions, conversation. Again, open mind, open heart. That is just how I live my life. And so, yeah, whatever questions there are, please don't hesitate to ask.
Amanda, you are amazing. Your story is so powerful, and I think it's going to impact so many people that hear it. So, of course, we have a few questions, and then again, folks, if you can put your questions in the chat and the Q&A, we'll go ahead and read those off for you. First, I want to ask, so we've had in the state of Michigan, we've had quite a few. Actually, last year was pretty rough for our EMS, fire, and police in terms of suicide in the state. And so our numbers keep rising. We unfortunately, over the last few years, have had our numbers go up each year. And so you mentioned that the sheriff's department, they kind of still haven't gotten a message or change with this. Do you know, and I know in the midst of going through your husband's death, there's probably a lot that was going on. Do you know if there was some sort of like push for education to the department, or some sort of kind of organization that was willing to reach out in a space that could maybe help us find resources for the actual departments to kind of change their.
Yeah, so with our sheriff's department specifically, I don't think that they would be interested. You know what I mean? However, I find that I don't know how to answer this. So like for example, like First Help, making everything good, like they provide resources. They make sure there's resources out there. One for me that I like to hand out a lot is more to the police side, but it's 1-800-COP line. That's a resource that is free of charge. You just dial it any time of the day. It's retired police officers that get it, that are willing to talk with people. But as far as like getting resources, I mean, so our sheriff's department, after Chris passed away, they did get a therapist or a psychiatrist or somebody. However, the issue there is trust. And especially on the law enforcement side, if you are seen as somebody that is going through stuff, they can threaten to take your weapon away, which is a huge deal to somebody. Like I stated in the beginning, when Chris walked out of those doors and he said, I don't know what to do. Like I know myself as a cop. I don't know how to be a dad and everything. And that's huge. So being threatened to take your weapon away is a big deal. And to be honest, in our sheriff's department, and you could probably tell, there's no trust. Like there's no trust for the higher ups. And so for them providing this person to go to, not having that trust in place, knowing that if what I say to this person isn't going to get to my superiors, I think that's a huge issue. And so if there's no trust, it's not going to really go far, if that makes sense. They also claim to have upgraded their workout facility. And they told me it's because they didn't want another Chris situation on their hands. That was sad. Yeah. So yeah, really nice people. But anyway, so I mean, you can give resources, but also there has to be a lot of trust involved too. Because right now there isn't with a lot of mental health stuff. That's why there's so much stigma around it, because we're afraid to say, yeah, I got some things going on upstairs, you know? So I think that having resources available, I mean, the fire department that just went through it this past year, they were given resources. They did an incredible job because there's trust. There's trust between them and their guys and gals on, on the department. And I think that's a huge piece of it, is having that trust available.
Absolutely. Yeah, trust is huge in that space. Okay, so Kobe, feel free if you have a question to pop in. I know that we go back and forth. I'll go ahead and read some of the questions that we have here. First one is one of my favorite sayings is suicide does not stop the pain. It just moves it to those who are left behind. So it's a great saying, and we often hear it. But just like you were saying about Chris, I think most of the people that get to that point are thinking they're doing what's best for their families. And then the fallout after that is a lot harder for the families. The next question says, you have spoken with elected officials in Wisconsin for the legislators. You mentioned a bill, right?
So I have not spoken to Wisconsin specifically. It is something that I want to do in the future. I just need to get my own self ready for that, because that's a mentally taxing thing. As far as federally, there is a bill that was passed and that was with the First Help that helped do that. Our president, Karen Solomon, like fought on Government Hill. Like, she is a woman that I am so glad I'm associated with. We'll just put it that way. But yeah, so there is a bill that is backdated to 2019, and families that qualify then will still continue to receive their benefits. We don't qualify because it happened in 2018. Plus, he wasn't actively working at the time. So for example, Wisconsin did not match his it's escaping me right now. his retirement. What is it called? His pension.
And
Yeah, they did not do that because he wasn't actively working. So I pretty much lost everything. I only got that what he put in. So that was really rough, but there's a lot of changes that do need to happen, and they need to happen from a legal standpoint. Once I'm feeling a little bit better in myself and I'm mentally ready to take that on, I would love to take that on for Wisconsin specifically, because it needs to happen. Wisconsin, like I said, is one of the worst states. And I don't know why. I mean, we have had a lot of things happen here throughout the climate of politically and what have you. And our first responders have seen a lot. Waukesha County specifically, the infamous Waukesha Christmas Parade. If you haven't looked into that, that's crazy. Slender Man happened in Waukesha. Gypsy Rose, she was found in Waukesha County. I was working those days, we'll put it that way. And so like we've been through a lot. And then also we've had the Kenosha thing and so much. And so Wisconsin needs to get it together. Every state needs to get it together, but we really need to start taking care of our own. And this is something that I like to say is that, and I feel like I can say this as a veteran. We take care of our vets when they come home. We should do better, but we do. I mean, they go to war in a different area of the world, in a different country. But like our police officers specifically and our first responders generally are going to war every day. It's just domestic war. And it's, not knowing if you're coming home that night. It's not knowing what you don't know what you're going to see when those tones go off. You don't know what that's going to be. And it's time we start treating it as that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I think we have another question. What do you say to those who work in departments that aren't supportive of mental health, but want to seek help without their company knowing? So what kind of advice would you give in that space?
Absolutely. So, and I can say this. So, for example, the sheriff's department, I have great example, right? I've had a few of the deputies that have reached out to me specifically because they're like, listen, I don't know what to do. And so for me, I've given them Copline. I've had one deputy actually use Copline and it changed their life. And they're actually working for a different department now and doing really well. Just having resources available. So for example, first help, like Karen, the president, and I are on like speed dial basis. And when I'm calling, she knows that there's something that I'm calling for. And there's so many resources out there for whether it be, at the end of the day, we can give resources, right? We can say like, you can go here to get assistance, or there's an inpatient here, because I think that that's necessary sometimes. But at the end of the day, you have to choose yourself. And if that department is not supporting you in what you need, I know it's terrifying. Like I said, I just quit my job last year. But you got to put yourself first, because if you don't stand up for yourself and if you don't put yourself first, nobody else is going to do it for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, and I know that it's just like you said, Amanda, that folks are struggling all over the country, and each of our states need to do better in the mental health space. But of course, for our Michigan first responders, we always encourage you guys to go call our call line. So 1-833-347-8766, and go to the website, fst5.org, for resources. Again, you can find clinicians there. You can do the whole nine. And that's just the start. But more importantly than that is reaching out to additional peers as well. Talking to your peers, you guys, it literally starts the process of tearing down the stigma around mental health, is when you guys are talking to each other, or talking to other individuals who may be feeling the same way. And that's kind of what we hear often after a major event happens, or something like losing a coworker or losing a loved one happens is that we find out that everyone's kind of having these same sort of feelings. And so we want to make sure that we're talking to each other, we're being a support for each other and able to get each other to the resources that they need. So I think that that's just kind of our call to action to help one another in that space as much as we possibly can. But we hope that these same quick resources and websites and phone numbers we can get into stations and departments as well. So the sheriffs don't have to say, you know, the resources. The sheriff can say, I have resources and I want to give you these resources, right?
Absolutely. And they could be closed-minded all they want to this issue, as long as they're open to giving the resources. They could have their personal views. Personally, I don't care about that, as long as they're like open to someone coming to them and then giving those resources to them. I know we got Mike Waringa on here, and I know he does a phenomenal job for Grand Rapids Police and worked on their peer team for a very long time. And we're doing something similar with Traverse City Police, where we're trying to build up that peer team and get them a lot more involved, because the numbers are increasing. I mean, we're at 7 for this year for officers, are we not? I believe so when I last looked, but
Say
we
you can always
definitely.
find it on the First Help website. It's just
Mhm.
reported it only because that's all they can do at this time. But if you want an up-to-date look,
Yeah, and I think
Amanda,
that's what I last seen.
what's the first help website? I'll throw it in the chat.
sure, it's just www dot and then the number one st help.org.
Perfect. While you're throwing that in there, I'll read another question. As a former first responder, how did you make the change from your whole personality being a first responder to now as you're retired?
A really great question. It's actually something I still struggle with, to be honest. I miss my job. Honestly, I miss dispatching. I miss firefighting, and it's just I definitely can put myself empathetically in my husband's shoes when he said that comment, because it does take over your personality. I miss like being in the know and knowing what everybody's doing. I'm very nosy. Also when I was in the army, I had a job where I got to tell people what to do, and being a dispatcher, I got to tell people what to do, and God bless my fiance's heart. He has that going for him. But I miss it. I miss it a lot. But honestly, working with therapy has really helped. Knowing that I did something important, I gave back. And I think as a first responder, I think that I'm not alone when I say this. And I read something about this, that a lot of first responders and veterans, or, people in the military, do that job because of some type of childhood trauma that they had, or some need to be that caregiver. And for me, 100% can say that that was the case. And so finally breaking down that my childhood trauma, and that need to be that caregiver, um, kind of figuring out the root of that has helped me overcome not doing that job anymore, and knowing that it's okay to sit back and realize I need this dog. I need my, my service animal, because I kind of have imposter syndrome because I have this invisible disease, right? Or disorder, or whatever you want to call it. But knowing that I'm worthy, right? That we're all worthy of doing what we need to do to take care of ourselves. And I think that those building blocks, tearing down that wall and just building it back up with more healthy tools, is huge.
Awesome. I have to say, like, look amazing, you're glowing, and I can see the happiness. So I'm glad you found the right one, which kind of leads me to my question was, at what point did you do it from the get-go? Like, were you open with your fiance from the get-go, or did it take time to kind of like tear that wall down and kind of let them in?
Yeah, so we actually kind of have a funny story, I guess, on how we actually met. And we actually met on TikTok. So he and I were part of a group of friends that created this like mental health group, if you will, on TikTok for a while, where we each had different backgrounds of whether it be veteran backgrounds or first responder backgrounds, that we could help people and just kind of give them somebody to talk to, that one of us was available 24/7 to, work with people, because people were going to TikTok, especially during the pandemic and everything, to kind of decompress and get away from what was going on in the world. And so he is a vet as well. And so we kind of met through this group. I always thought he lived in Indiana at the time. And I always thought he was a cool guy. I'd never thought anything of it. But he knew my story and I knew his story because of this group that we were in, because we would talk about it a lot. Finally, one day they were having like a get together in Indiana, because most of them are from Indiana. And I was like, you know what? Like, it's a short drive. Like, it was like a 4-hour drive. I'm like, I'll find somebody to take care of my kid for the night and I'll just go for a night. And I never, at that moment, he and I never had spoken personally. Like, it was always in a group setting. So a group chat, group, whatever. Right. But I went to Indiana that night and I met them. It was a big group of people, probably like 20 plus people. But there's actually a picture we have of our first meeting, and it was, when they say love at first sight, it's so gross to talk about because I'm not a touchy feely person, but it was love at first sight. And so I think him knowing me and who I was at the core and what I'd been through helped a ton. And a couple months later, I mean, that was probably 2 weeks before the anniversary of Chris's death. And every year I do this thing called Light My World Blue for the anniversary of Chris's death. And that's July 16th. And it's where I have people put blue lights up, wear blue, whatever it may be. And that is just my symbol to Chris and to others that are silently struggling with their mental health, that feel like they can't speak up, to show that they're supported and they're seen. And his name is Travis, and Travis actually drove to my house and completely lit my house blue for me. And I mean, that was only a couple of weeks in, and I'm like, yep, you're the guy. You're the guy that gets it. That, I mean, he truly honors my husband and loves my husband as if he knew him. And now he lives in Wisconsin and we're engaged for one day. One day. No rush, but he is truly one of a kind. And I want to say something. There's so many of us that are widows that are totally terrified, or or just think that, I mean, Chris was one in a million. I say that all the time, that I was so spoiled with him. I don't want to get emotional, but like we went on adventures, and no matter what was going on, I mean, that guy was my guy. And I remember sitting in my kitchen crying to my mom after he had passed. The kitchen was his favorite spot. He was an amazing cook. But I remember just saying, like, that's a one in a million, mom. Like, that doesn't come very often. And I was 30 years old at the time when he passed. I'm like, and that was my shot, and he's gone. And I remember just thinking that would never happen again. But God always has a plan, right? And it's not our plan. And so I'm so grateful for Travis. I probably don't tell him enough, but I want people out there that were in my shoes or in my shoes to know that you're worthy and you're deserving of good in life. I believe that what we put out in the world, if we act like Jesus, love like Jesus, we're going to get it back. And I think that goes for anybody and everybody, but I think specifically, like my fellow widows out there, it's hard. It's hard to let somebody in after we lose our person, but doesn't mean that there's not anybody else. So
That's great. Great question. Okay, so we have two more questions. First is, What tools help you to help your daughter with grieving the loss of her dad? Asking as my children struggled with not being able to meet their grandfather.
That's precious. That makes my heart break. But so she was only 2.5 months old when her daddy passed. So to this day, I still have all the pictures up. I've never removed anything. His urn is on my mantle. I keep him very much involved in our everyday life and our everyday conversations. Having Travis be a very secure man in himself, he likes to be a part of those conversations. And so we talk about him daily, and she's a spitting image of him for not truly knowing him, her mannerisms, the way she looks. I may have carried her for 9 months, but that is Chris Jr. And I say that a lot to her. I'll just call her Chris Jr. and we kind of make it fun. But at the same time, in the days that she's having a really hard time with it, she's very sad. We talk, I mean, we use our faith. We talk about heaven all the time. Especially after losing Garrett, who was her uncle Garrett. It's something that I'm not afraid to talk to with her. I'm not afraid to listen to what she has to say, even though it's breaking my heart a lot of the time. There's been conversations like when she was 3 of it, like a recording of her asking why she can't just go to heaven and if she can just go to heaven now. And that breaks my heart as a mom, right? But having that faith and instilling that faith in her is huge. She also goes to therapy as well. In fact, we have the same therapist. Oh, my dog just knocked it, sorry. But we have the same therapist. So then if there's something that needs to be stepped in, and our therapist can do it. She's turning 6. So she's at that age where like things are making more sense. And I remember, so I had 3 stepchildren. He had 3 other children besides mine, ours together. And the youngest at the time when he passed was actually 5. And so kind of, it's interesting to see the way that my daughter is starting to process it as her sister did at that time. And I think that at the age, whatever age they are, is going to be different too. I know as she gets older, it's going to be different. She doesn't know exactly how he died also, but she's kind of gets it. She knows his brain was sick. So I try to do everything in an age appropriate conversation with her, but for us, the faith is huge. Just knowing that we're going to see him again one day, is huge. And just keeping his memory alive and little stories that we do or movies that we watch. We watch his favorite movie a lot. The Greatest Showman. Love it. But yeah, and she just talks as if he, is on a long vacation, and for right now it works, right? But things will change, and as they get older, it changes. But I think just keeping that person alive and talking about them helps a lot.
Thank you very much. Got another one. More of a personal question. As a widow, how did you deal with loneliness?
I still deal with loneliness, and because you're still I'm still grieving. And I think with grief comes loneliness. But for me, to put it back to my faith, I pray a lot. And when I didn't know what else to do, I would pray. I also took up hobbies. I'm the queen of starting new hobbies and then dropping them like 2 weeks later. So right now, like for example, right now my hobby is baking, and I think I can be this like amazing cake decorator, even though I'll probably be dropping that like 2 weeks later. But I think just like taking the time to like just focus on me, and or like it's caused me to kind of reach out to other people too. I'll call her my best friend. I met her, I would say about 1.5 years ago, through my church. Hang on, Penelope, lay down. Sorry, my dog is getting restless, but I met her through my church, and she's a couple of years younger than I am, but she's got 4 kids. And she is so Christ driven, and like, she's such a good friend to have, that like, she has never been through anything like this, but she knows the right questions to ask and when to be present. And I think that there's, again, when I mentioned the being uncomfortable earlier, um, so many people, when they're uncomfortable, they like shy away, right? They're like, I don't want to, I don't want to make her cry, or I don't want to, bring up his name or what have you. But I think that being somebody to sit with somebody, whether they're in my position or, grieving something else, and if they cry, and or if they want to be quiet, they want to be quiet. But I think that having somebody just check in and sit with you in your grief is huge, and that kind of helps take away that loneliness. I Her name is Annie, and I pray that everybody finds an Annie in their life. I thank God for her every day, and she's probably going to hate me for saying that because she's not a touchy-feely person either. But um, I think that finding somebody that can be that person for you, and for me, it was through church, and I'm so grateful for my church, and then finding Annie. So
And I love how you keep bringing up church, because that is something that's changed their outlook on suicide. I mean, our suicide in 2017, he was Catholic, and that's a big no-no in their religion, but they accepted it because it's an illness. It truly is. And we had the funeral there. It was an actual Catholic funeral, and we did our duties after that, but they're starting to accept it as like it's a true illness. So, I mean, if they could do it, I don't understand why why we can't.
right. I found my church I would say a couple months after about a month after Chris passed is when I found my church. And I think it's a God thing how I found them. I won't go into that, but they accepted me and Kennedy, my daughter, from day one. They welcomed us in with open arms. I talk about April 20th of 2018. That following year, April 20th of 2019 was Easter Sunday. And because of them, I was able to be baptized that day. And truly accept God into my heart and my life, and thank him for everything that he's done for me, even throughout what I went through. And I was able to give my testimony, and knowing, because of them, knowing that I will get to see Chris again one day, because for so long I wasn't sure, because I wasn't really raised anything. I was just kind of raised. Like we went to some Catholic masses, and we went to some other things, there wasn't consistency. So having them just kind of speak that life back into my heart was huge. And even to this day, I mean, they still take care of us. Like the Bible says, take care of the widows and the orphans, and they take that seriously at my church. I go to a non-denominational church, so I sing on the worship team now. I'm very involved in church. I have an interview coming up for our local PBS station, and we're going to be doing it at my church, and I'm grateful. The thing that I always say, and this is to my believers, is that just like you praise God on the mountaintop for reaching that mountaintop, you got to praise him in the valley too, because there's a reason why you're in that valley. And I truly believe that. And so even though things haven't always been hunky-dory since Chris left, I mean, they've been really rough, like financially really rough. I almost lost my house multiple times. I had to buy a car and couldn't get a loan. Like, he left me in a rough shape financially, so that's been hard. Mentally, emotionally, obviously that's a given, but God always shows up in my life, and he always provides, and I know he always will. And I think that it's so important to have, if you're not a believer, I just pray that you have something to hold on to that gives you that faith, that gives you that gusto to keep going. And as far as the suicide thing, I believe that Jesus wants us all in heaven, right? And I believe that if you accept Christ into your life, you will make it there. And I know that Chris did. And so that's why I'm so grateful that my church recognizes that as well. And, um, and I think that we will get there as a Christian society. But with everything, there's a stigma, and it's going to take time. And that's mental health for you, I guess.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So our next, this last one is more of a statement and a kind of a message to you. So I'll read it. It says, Amanda, I am so, so sorry that you have to have this conversation. Thank you so much for your story. So hard to hear, but thank you for what you're doing. Your work and your calling may have changed, but is so very important. I will pray that you continue to do this work at whatever pace you can. Thank you.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
That was amazing. So if there isn't any more questions or in the chat or the Q&A, which people can have, I want to ask you one final question. Amanda, what do you want us to know about Chris? What do you want to share with us about Chris?
Great question. He was a beautiful person, in and out. He was the kind of guy that did take work home with him because he cared that much about people. I remember one time he was dealing with a domestic violence situation, and he came home trying to figure out how he could purchase a phone for this wife that was being battered, from his heart. Like, he just did it from his heart, and that's how he treated everybody in his life. When he was let go and then when he died, his deputies still called him their lieutenant. His deputies are the ones that made him the remembrance bracelet because he was their lieutenant. He was the one that they trusted, and that's who he was. He was just a kind, empathetic human being. He loved to have deep conversations and to learn about people. He loved to laugh. He loved to cook. After a late shift, he would be found in front of the TV watching Food Network with like some pretzels or Cheez-Its or goldfish, whatever snack we had with the kids, and then a Diet Coke. That was him. And he's missed. He is so missed on this earth, and this earth is not better without him. It was a really good place with him.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your stories today and being here with us today.
I know that you put first help in the comments, but I also want to, sorry, my nose is running from getting emotional.
No
I
worries.
also just want to put in the other websites.
Yeah. Yep. You can chat that in and just make sure you change that to everyone. Yep. And it can go. Perfect.
And so I want to make sure that there's the come on, computer. So first help is in there. I want to make sure that making everything good is in there. And then also, so for Unbutton the Stigma, I'm just on Facebook. If you look it up on Facebook, it's just Unbutton the Stigma. As we were discussing earlier, I did release some tumblers that are for sale that help out with a local, it's my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, it's their business. So a small business, but also helps out Unbutton the Stigma, get the word out there. So there's some tumblers that are for sale that you can personalize with like your loved one's information, like their name and end of watch, or you can change it. It comes as a standard like cobalt blue color because that's my logo, but you can change the color of the mugs and everything, but that also helps out. But I just want to thank everybody for listening and taking the time out of your day to be here. That's just it means a lot. So thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
No problem. Well, thank you for being here, Amanda. Kobe, another great episode. Thank you for co-hosting with me. As a reminder, you can always reach us at FST5 at fst5.org, or you can give us a call at 833-34-STRONG. That is 833-347-8766. I want to give a special shout out to our partners, MyCal and Wayne State University, for helping to establish and create this program. So as always, they are the people who make this happen. So we give shout out to them. Thank you guys again for being here, and we will see you guys for another webinar in February, where we have another amazing presentation at the last Wednesday in February. This one is called Cell 911. It's a great story from a first responder who both has a police and a fire background. So I hope that you guys join in for that. Look forward to the registration link coming soon. Anything else, Lupe?
No, thank you so much. You did awesome, and so happy for you. Everything's going great, and it shows. And continue to support and follow, of course, and keep up the awesome work. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you again.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a good night.